guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. Now, our guest for this week's show is international real estate investment expert Reid Kirchenbauer. Now, for over a decade, Reid has searched Asia for some of the world's top-performing investments. He directs Invest Asia's global research and day-to-day operations, focusing on uncorrelated assets that will grow and preserve his clients' wealth. Now, Reid moved to Asia the week after he turned 18 and soon afterward graduated with a finance degree. He then started the world's first frontier market property fund in Cambodia. From buying property in Thailand to trading stocks in Singapore, Reid has the answers and insights about investing across Asia. And so with that, guys, it's my honor to welcome Reid Kirchenbauer to the show. Reid, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm great, Kevin, and it's wonderful to be here. Thank you very much.
Excited to have you, and I know that we're on a 12-hour time difference here, and so I appreciate you jumping on. With such a big variance there, and excited to learn more about you, your business, and I guess first and foremost, I gave you a brief introduction there, but I'd love to, maybe pass it back to you, Reid, if we could, and let's start way back when, right? So, like you were born in the U.S. You were born in the U.S. and decided at the age of 18 that you were going abroad and then staying abroad at that. So maybe give us a little bit more of a backstory of kind of the upbringing, and then ultimately what really put you on your path that you're on today.
Yes. Well, I was born in LA, as you mentioned. And when I was very young, 6, 7, 8 years old, I did some television work. I mostly did some nationally aired TV commercials. So for Sears, Toys R Us, Cracker Jack, things like that. So I didn't get rich off of it, but I was doing pretty well for an 8-year-old, let's say. So, and by the time I reached my teens, my parents, we moved to Austin, Texas, and it's kind of hard to land an acting gig in Texas or really anywhere outside of LA for the most part, especially back in the mid 2000s. Maybe the industry's a bit different now, but by that time, I was very interested in the stock market and in real estate also. And the reason for this is normally when you're making some amount of money as a young child, either it's put into a trust fund if you're making huge amounts of money, like, Malcolm in the Middle, millions of dollars, you get a trust fund. In my case, it was kind of a lower version of that. Some of it was in the custody of my parents. So, but usually, the deal is that you can't get a hold of your money unless you invest it. Mm-hmm. So a young version of me at the time was thinking, well, if I invest my money, I can buy even more, whatever I was interested in at the time, video games, toys. So that led me to be interested in investing. I took some money and along with my parents, who went half in with me, we bought a duplex in Austin, Texas. That was one of the investments. Used some of the money I made as an actor as a down payment. And also, besides that, I was interested in stocks, in not only the U.S. but around the world.
What age are we? Sorry, I didn't mean to. What age are we talking about here? When your interest was really enhanced with buying real estate, you bought the duplex, you're interested in stock. What age are we talking about here?
Oh, by this time I was 14, 15 years old.
Still very young, very young. Yes. to have those interests. So that's very interesting. So anyway, go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt you. We'll dive into that a little deeper, but keep going, please.
Oh, yes. And I'm almost done. It's just a short version of my life story, I guess. But I was very interested in investing all over the world. And by the time I was 16, 17, I was taking some trips to Thailand and around the world. And I thought, well, this is somewhere I'd like to maybe spend some time, maybe 4 years, because I was getting ready to go to university at the time. In the US, I guess they call it college. Here it's university. But I thought, well, yeah, I can spend 4 years in Thailand. Seems like a place to not only see how business works in an emerging part of the world, but I like Thailand a lot. Very international city, world-class restaurants. It's a wonderful place. So I moved out here pretty much the day after I turned 18. Set out to college, and soon after I got here, I figured out, well, Thailand's great, but really some of the places to invest are even more emerging markets than Thailand. Places like Cambodia, Indonesia, Philippines. Thailand's very much on the radar. Bangkok is the most touristed city in the world, even more so than London and Paris
I
during a
did not know
normal
that.
year. So,
Wow.
yes, so very much on the radar. But I started going out a bit and looking at other property markets. And I started a property fund in Cambodia when I was 24, and I still manage it to this day, along with consulting services and some other projects that I'm working on. I do everything from real estate to exports to all sorts of things out here in Asia.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I appreciate that, and I'm gonna wind it back a little bit because I want to get a better understanding of really the foundation of what you built today, and really that started back, in your when you're 14, 15, when you bought that duplex with your parents, utilizing some of the funds that you had made doing different acting gigs as a kid. But then also, your interest for the stock market also became very apparent. But what I want to understand about all that is, most kids at that age, I mean, they're out riding their bikes around, they're playing, team sports, things of that nature, and they're not even exposed to that world. And if they were exposed to that, they probably wouldn't even have the basics or the basic understanding or enough of comprehension to either garner an interest in it. And so I guess I'm trying to help me understand. Was this something? Did your parents did they instill these different ideas into you? I mean, were they investors themselves? Help me understand how you really gained this interest at such a young age.
Oh no, my to answer your question, no, my parents, my father's a stand-up comedian, so I
No
don't come
way.
from a business
Okay.
family. Um, but it was, to be honest, I'm not really sure. It was many years ago. I think it was just the drive to being able to take what I had earned at a young age and to first off get a hold of it, and secondly turn it into something more. And when you're 13 or 14, I mean, you can't really get a job. I guess in depending on where you are, you might be able to go work at a fast food place in high
Sure.
school. But it was, I guess, more of just a drive to get a hold of what I'd made earlier than I otherwise could and make use of it.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. So let's talk about the move to Asia. Obviously you made the decision prior to turning 18 that was going to be your path. And talk to me about, really during the research phase of things, what ultimately landed you on the decision, like, this is where I'm going, this is where I need to go plant my flag.
Yes. Well, the first time I came to Thailand was when I was 17 years old. I was out here with my parents, and it was my first time being in truly an international environment. I'd gone down to Mexico at this
Mhm.
point. I was up in Canada, but coming to Southeast Asia is the closest thing you can get to being on another planet. Uh, and seeing how just the growth here, the people, the natural, just I want to say catalysts that propel growth. For example, people moving in from rural areas into the city, which naturally drives demand for real estate, and a lot of the demographically driven trends that you don't really see in a lot of developed markets. And I
Right.
saw this, and I had already bought a property in a duplex in Austin at this time, and so I was kind of involved in real estate. But I thought, wow, this is a city that's a population of 12 million is going to be 16 million by the end of this decade. And I was looking at things like that and thought that I should get involved with it.
Okay. And then let's talk about the Cambodia Investment Fund, which is a fund that you still operate today. I know that before we start recording here, I kind of get an idea of what's inside that fund, what type of assets. And I know it's got a share of apartments, hotels, and a few other various assets. And so just maybe share a little more detail and context about the Cambodia Investment Fund and what's the overall objective of that fund.
Yes, around when I was a junior, senior in college, this was, I want to say, back in 2015. I started traveling a bit more, just around the region and seeing just the opportunities that existed outside of Thailand and perhaps even more developing countries. So I've started looking at Cambodia very closely, and this is a country that, I mean, when I say Cambodia, people tend to think of the Khmer Rouge, and they don't get a very good, it doesn't bring back positive
Yeah.
thoughts. But Cambodia, 30 years later, it's one of the fastest growing countries in the entire world. Averages GDP growth of 6 to 7% over the past decade, very friendly to foreign investment. And I started looking at this and thinking, well, this is maybe where I should get involved. So myself, um, a few other investors, mostly European, but really from other places in Asia, all over the world. Myself and some other clients of mine I'd been working with at the time, we looked at this market and thought, well, this is uh, really a growth story. It's a country that had a tragic past, but for all intents and purposes has come back and is now a thriving economy. And uh, back when we first started, it was just about $250,000, which made us probably one of the smallest funds at that time in the world at that time. And since then, things have taken off. We manage several apartment buildings, a hotel, and it's been quite a transition process over the past 7 years. It's been.
Okay. What were some of the biggest barriers that you faced being an expat? Really getting your bearings in a new country and in a new continent, and obviously there's competitors there. There's folks local to that marketplace. Just talk to me about some of those hurdles that you had to face and how you overcame them.
A lot of them is just the fact that buying property overseas, let alone managing a business, is very different than it would
Hmm.
be in the Western world. There's everything from language barriers to different legal requirements, standards to abide by, and it's just a completely different market. I think that diversifying abroad is a good idea, uh, just because of, well, just diversification purposes, being able to rely on other markets besides the US. A lot of the time, if someone were to invest in a single stock, for example, people would say, well, that's just too risky. What if the company goes bankrupt? Fewer people ask themselves, well, why should I only invest in one country? Why should I hold all of my money inside the US?
Hmm.
And I think that's a good starting point for investing internationally. But with that, does come a lot of barriers, and you have to get used to doing business in a completely different environment. So, to answer your question, I would say uh, the biggest barrier was just learning how to do things differently. Learning that, for example, if you were to buy a property in the US, you'd first go to a real estate agent often. In Cambodia, people hang signs outside their windows that says for sale in Khmer script. So you have to drive around on a motorcycle, take down notes, and just things like that can be very, there's a very steep learning curve, but a lot of opportunities also.
Okay. I love case studies, and that gets me. It gives us a better understanding of kind of your business model as a whole, of the different properties that you own in your Cambodia fund that you have there. So maybe I know that you had said you just recently purchased a hotel. Maybe give us a better understanding of just really the opportunity that you saw with that respective hotel. Maybe it's a value add play. Is it a redevelopment play? What is that business model, and what's the plan of execution there?
Well, this was a 8-story, 50 unit. Each of the units is about 400 square feet hotel, and we bought this in mid 2022 last year. And back then, at the time, Cambodia was, for apart from very few uh, rare cases, closed to foreign travel, along with most of Asia.
Hmm.
And the residential property we owned at the time was still, it was the rent occupancy rates were above 90%. So most of the people we had in the apartments were doing, it was fine, but the tourism sector, along with everywhere in the world, was hit heavily.
Hmm.
And there were certainly some people who would over leverage themselves and needed to get out of it. They just weren't able to attract any people to stay at their hotels. So we went in, bought this hotel at a discount, um, and this was a building that was built about 10 years ago. I believe it was late 2012. So we're going to go in, do some repainting, bring things up to uh, more of an expat, the standards that people from developed countries would expect. And this is a hotel that mostly caters to a local market. So we're changing that, improving the marketing, and one of that's kind of what we're doing, is just improving the buildings, improving the marketing, using our network of realtors to achieve higher occupancy rates. And yes, that's what we're working on.
Okay. Okay. No, no, fantastic. I appreciate that. And just bringing up the expat standards. What does that mean? What are the types of improvements that you intend to make to that property that will get it there?
A lot of the properties in Cambodia were built several decades ago. Cambodia was a French colony, so some of them were even going back to French colonial days. And these are buildings that are structurally in solid condition, just like anything you were, to find in France. But these are old shop houses, and they often need quite a bit of work. So, with some of the previous pieces of real estate, we've just gone in, completely redone the unit, redid the bathrooms, the kitchen, tiling, new paint, put a garden on the roof, things like that. And that's really helped us a lot, and just value added renovations, and also in attracting tenants, and having higher occupancy rates.
Mm-hmm. And then what's the long-term business plan with this particular property? Or is your fund typically a buy, improve, and hold? Is it a buy, improve, and sell? How does that work?
Right now, it's buy, improve, and hold. I see most of the profit from this over the next 10, 15 years to be appreciation, just because of the demographic trends that will drive demand. People moving. Well, Phnom Penh, for example, Cambodia's capital, has a population of 2.5 million right now. That's expected to be 5 million by 2030. And it's just things like that, which I think will drive appreciation. And I think yields will also increase along with them in the longer term. But yes, the intent's very much to hold until a later date. I'm not sure what that's going to be, but when I look at things and see, well, there's a 300% profit, that's perhaps a time to take gains.
What are the debt options like on properties such as this? I mean, I guess specifically speaking to Cambodia, since that's where a lot of your properties are located. Um, is there debt available? I mean, is there a robust debt market available?
There is, but it's very difficult as a foreigner. If
Okay.
you're coming in as a foreign buyer, as is the case with most countries in Asia, it's pretty much going to have to be a cash transaction.
Okay. So you're doing all equity on these deals for the most part. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Um, Reid, what haven't I asked you? Just generally speaking, that you feel would be of interest to the listeners, whether it be about the fund, about Asia in general, about Cambodia more specifically. Just your wealth of knowledge. You've been there for many years now, doing investments, and so again, just anything that you feel is relevant that we haven't hit on today.
Oh, well, let me think. I guess I wanted to just drive home that diversification, now more than perhaps ever, is very important. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, I do invest Asian, but I don't just talk about I don't think just Asia. If you're living in Asia, I think you should invest in the US. I think Europeans should invest. I think having global investments is a good idea to diversify yourself, um, outside of your one country's currency and financial system. And I don't, if someone doesn't already have a diversified portfolio, then maybe it's best to build that up first. But for somebody who already has uh, a wide variety of properties, stocks, a fully diversified portfolio already, I do think it's important, and is something that not a lot of people do, is putting
Mm-hmm.
5-10% of your portfolio in foreign assets that aren't reliant on the US, the UK, France, wherever you happen to be.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great advice, and I know that you've got a lot of resources, lots of articles that have been written on your website. Is your website best place for folks to go to not only digest your resources and some of the articles that you've written, but also to learn more about you and your group?
Yes, the website's the best place to go, investasian.com, and there's 200 articles, and that's the best way to read all about investing in Asia and what I do.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Reid, it's been a lot of fun having you today. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all your valuable insights. And it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Kevin. It was great to be here.
Alrighty, guys, that's all we have for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host, Kevin Butt, wishing you huge success. Take care now.